We've always known this, but I just want to restate it for you today because I think it's critical in what we do trying to be financial deviants in a world where people are flipping on their heads to buy stuff they don't need to impress people that they don't even like. And the result is financial ruin very often. So again, we've all heard and talked about and quoted how important it is to hang around people of like mind. And sometimes that's hard to do, especially when you're endeavoring to go against the grain, to fight against the current. That is today's consumerism. So I will tell you, one of the things that has helped me to stay on the journey that my wife and I have been on now for several years is, yes, I did have some people that I could physically see and touch and bounce ideas off of. But one of the other things I did was read books. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to be readers and to consider the ideas of other people who may be more knowledgeable than you are in certain areas. But one of the things that came to me the other day is that, sometimes that's a way for me to be and hang around people who are of like mind, or at the very least, maybe further along down the road than I am in this area of financial literacy and wise decision making in areas involving our money. So books is another way to hang around, so to speak, these people, even though I may never meet them. I may never be in the same room with them, but their ideas are as powerful as if we were in the same room. So why am I opening up the podcast with this topic today? Well, I will tell you, it's tough when you're, as I said before, fighting against the current. I was reading an article on CNBC, and it said 61% of consumers said that they are now living paycheck to paycheck. Now, that in and of itself is eye-opening. It really is. And it's not shocking, I don't think, to any of us. But if you read a little further, it said that those people who are making $250,000 or more, or 36%, said that they live paycheck to paycheck. So let me say that again. 36% of the people in this survey who make $250,000 or more are living paycheck to paycheck. So what does that tell you? This is a conversation I have very often. I told you on the first episode that this podcast is simply a continuation of conversations that I'm having every day. But what does it tell you when someone who's making that kind of money is living paycheck to paycheck? Well, I think it says that it doesn't matter how much money you make. It does not matter how much money you make. What matters is how you think about money. Interestingly, one of the professionals that are notorious for being horrible money managers, strangely enough, is doctors, physicians. They are notorious for being poor money managers. And they often make great money. But again, it's not about how much you make. It is absolutely about how you think about money. I mean, you can read all the time about people who made no more than $40,000 in a year who are able to retire as millionaires. You know, sometimes when we're discussing finance, there's a natural tendency to go towards, entrepreneurs and people who have their own business, which, hey, I'm not going to be the person. I'm fully aware that entrepreneurs are what have created the society, quite frankly, that we have now in this country. Entrepreneurs, people who started new businesses. Most of the large businesses started with a single person, maybe two people, maybe a small family, and it grew. And now millions of people work for those companies. So I'm well aware of the importance and the critical role that entrepreneurs play and have played. But I think there's a tendency to look towards the entrepreneur, but the truth of the matter is there are probably as many, let's say, millionaires, since that's kind of what we talk about sometimes. There are as many millionaires who work jobs as there are who are entrepreneurs. Some of you may be aware of a book that was written a few years ago by a guy named Chris Hogan, and the title of the book was Everyday Millionaire. It kind of reminds you of The Millionaire Next Door, which is a famous book that I absolutely love. But this is The Everyday Millionaire. And in the book, he talks about the three careers. Well, first of all, they surveyed 10,000 millionaires across the country. 10,000. Probably, it's reported that it's the largest survey of millionaires ever in this country. So they surveyed the 10,000 millionaires, and there were three careers that outweighed any other career among that millionaire population. Number one was engineer. Number two was accountant. And hold your hat for the third one. Number three was a teacher. Engineer, accountant, and a teacher. So what does that tell us? Well, you could probably, the engineer probably makes, depends on what role and what company and what the position is, but it's pretty safe to say that the engineers and the accountants make more than the teacher. Probably significantly more. But teacher is the number three among all the other careers, jobs, positions that those 10,000 millionaires had. It held the number three position. So we have to kind of back up a little bit and really understand that is not how much you make. It is how you think about using however much you make. And in this same article I referenced for CNBC, it talked about the average FICO score for those high earners, $250,000 or more. The average FICO score was 758. 758. They're creditworthy. You would call them creditworthy. But they had high financial obligations. And what tends to happen, and you have to fight it, is the more money you make, you have to raise your standard of living to match the money that you're making, which totally goes against one of our standard hallmark type adages around personal finance, and that is you have to spend or live on less than you make. Easier said than done. So that's why I talked about, and I opened up talking about, it's important who you hang around, whether it's physically hanging around them or virtually hanging around them, or hanging around them by reading on a book or a blog or listening to a podcast like you're listening to now. You have to turn off the noise of the masses and turn on the voice of people who are thinking like you, who realize the primary way that jumpstarts a person's ability to build wealth is getting out of debt, paying off all this stuff that you owe, some of which is probably already broken or in the attic, but you're still paying on it. Get rid of that stuff so that you can have money to save and invest. That's it. That's the starting point. I'll tell you a personal story. When my wife and I made the decision, and I use that lightly, my wife and I, it was kind of me coming home and saying, hey, it doesn't make sense what we're doing. Let's look at doing something different. And she went along with it. And at some point, I'm probably going to have her on a podcast and she can tell you exactly how she felt when, as we started going through that process. But also, interestingly, at the time, I was the only one working. She was at home making sure my sons were okay. We had moved to another state, and so there was a lot going on. So we decided that, she really wanted to make sure that they were comfortable and settled in before she even thought about doing anything as far as work. But when we made that decision, I remember it so clearly because, we had car debt, we had student loan debt, we had a little bit of credit card debt. Here's the thing. We were never head over heels in debt. We always had some, but we were also always very careful not to overextend ourselves, but we still had it. But again, when we made a decision to really kind of turn around and head in a different direction financially, I remember we got out the envelopes. We budgeted using the envelope system, putting cash in the envelopes for those major categories: housing, food, power, utilities, those kinds of things, restaurants. We put the money in the envelopes, and when the money was gone for that month, the money was gone. But one of the major things that I decided to do that scared me was I stopped contributing to my 401k at the time. Now, that was not something I was even remotely interested in until it hit me that it didn't make any sense to, on one side, trying to build this mountain of money, and then on the other side, you're digging a hole and putting money in it because you're owing other people. So I remember when I made a decision, to completely, I don't know if I completely stopped or if I maybe I contributed enough to get the company match. Maybe that's what it was. I don't remember exactly. But I significantly reduced my 401k contribution. And when I did that and we went on a strict budget to the point where my children probably broke out in hives when they heard the word budget, the debt was gone so quick it was almost scary. It was gone. It happened so quickly. And we did there are two ways to pay off debt. One is they call it the debt snowball, and one is the debt avalanche. We did the snowball. We took the smallest debt that we owed, paid the minimum on everything else, and went ahead and paid off that smallest debt, whatever that was at the time. And then once we paid that out, we put that monthly contribution, we paired that with another bill to pay off. And so we just kind of started whittling away at those bills like that. And it was gone so quickly, it was scary. And I'm not even exaggerating. When we paid off that last debt, it was almost like, it wasn't almost like it. I actually had a raise because no longer was I making someone else wealthy by having to paying off the debt. Now I had the opportunity to actually start building my wealth. That was the difference. And you do know that when we borrow money, when we're in debt, we are literally somebody else's asset. So when I started really thinking about what I was doing, and we became intentional about getting out of debt and building wealth, man, it was a liberating feeling. Now, for some of you, that might sound really simple and like, oh man, that's not, it was so liberating. And I will tell you, since that day, I don't know, how many years ago is that now? That's probably been maybe 8 years ago. We have been able to keep the hard-earned money that we earn, however much it is, and build and use it to build our own nest egg, as opposed to continuing to help someone else get wealthy off of us. That was the moment for us. And everybody who goes on this journey, they have a moment. That was the moment for us. And again, at some point, I already asked my wife, she's probably going to join me in one episode and talk about how she felt during that time. And she will be honest with you how she felt. But she will also be honest with you now, since we took that journey and took those steps and made the progress we've made now. She'll let you know, hey, if it wasn't for Michael driving it, she admits that wasn't my deal. That wasn't my thing. And but she trusted me, and it's paid off for us. Going back to the article, CNBC, 61% of those making $250,000 or more living paycheck to paycheck. Guys, I got to tell you, that is one of the things that we can do to free ourselves up, is get out of that, so that we're not spending so that every dollar that we earn is not already obligated to someone else. You know, we can spend as much as 50% of our gross income on taxes and debt. As a matter of fact, the average American is probably close to that. You think about that now. 50% of your gross income going to the government in taxes and going to whoever in debt. And when I say taxes, I'm not just talking about your income taxes that you file. I'm talking about sales tax. I'm talking about property tax. I'm talking about your vehicle, to all that stuff, all that rolled into one. On average, is somewhere around 50%. So the one way you can place yourself in a much better financial position is to what? Pay off the debt. Keep that money for yourself and start owning stuff. You know, in today's world where we have, record inflation, interest rates going up, and the Fed says he's going to continue to raise interest rates. Maybe he'll stop that, but he has raised the interest rates over the last few quarters. So when interest rates are high or rising like they are now, the best thing you can be doing is owning stuff. In other words, when those interest rates are going up, instead of you being the borrower and being slave to the lender, if you believe in the Bible, you can use that money to grow your own money. That's it. Get out of the debt. Use the rising interest rates to help you, instead of having it beat you up because you're in debt and having to pay higher payments, and it's taking you longer to pay stuff off, and it's doing nothing to help your own financial picture. It's strictly because you bought something that obviously we couldn't afford, and now we're having to pay it off over time, and we're paying significantly more for it because we financed it. So the next thing I want to talk about is, there's some myths out there that I just wanted to kind of cover today, just to get us thinking a little differently. And again, this information some of it comes from the same book I referenced earlier, The Everyday Millionaire. So here's one. 74% of millennials and 52% of baby boomers believe that millionaires inherited all their wealth. 74% of millennials and 52% of baby boomers believe that millionaires inherited all their wealth. I've heard that throughout my life, but the numbers don't prove it out. What they found, again, when they surveyed these 10,000 millionaires, 21% of them received any inheritance at all. Only 21% received anything. Only 16% inherited more than $100,000. Only 3% received an inheritance at or above $1 million. So what does that mean? 79% of those 10,000 millionaires received no inheritance at all. 79%. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we have the ability, even if you don't grow your net worth to a millionaire. So let's set that straight. A millionaire doesn't mean you make $1 million. A millionaire means what you own. When you take what you own and subtract what you owe, the net is $1 million or more. And your house is included in that asset category. What you own, subtract what you owe, your debts, and that tells you what your net worth is. And if that's $1 million or more, you're a millionaire. And that's one of the awesome things I mentioned about the book I talked about earlier. The Millionaire Next Door is just, and the premise of the book is many folks who are millionaires are not the people that look like millionaires. There's a term I learned earlier I've been using. It's called stealth. In other words, you don't know that they're millionaires because they're not trying to impress you with what they drive. They probably got on a pair of Levi's and a pair of boots or some flip-flops. It doesn't matter. The point is, you can't always look at outer appearance to know who's really doing well. And that's why I think I love that book so much. But again, the myth. Oh, they haven't had to work a day in their lives. They've always been that way. That is not true. Now, I didn't say it's never true, but according to this survey, 79% of those 10,000 millionaires received any inheritance at all. But what did they do? And the careers were varied. Some made more money than others. But the one thing that was common is they had a budget. They could tell you what they spent last year on clothes. They could tell you what they spent on food last year. And for the most part, they bought used cars and they kept them for at least 10 years. They didn't worry about trying to shop to impress. Those were the common themes throughout. You got that group who's really got it going on, and then you have the pretenders. And the book had so many examples of those pretenders. They looked a certain part. They had the latest model car. The house was this. But when it got down to it, they were in over the head. As a matter of fact, I remember one particular couple, the in-laws were helping to pay for his kid's school. And he looked like he should have been running the whole city, but he didn't. He didn't really have it like that. He looked like he had it like that. And I talk about this a lot because we have to break through this whole thing of looking the part. A lot of the people who look the part aren't the part. I love when a young married couple gets excited about a growing brokerage account as opposed to the latest Jordans or whatever. That tells me that they're really, really thinking and they're way ahead of most people in their peer group. We have to, who we hang out with, who we're around, or who we're listening to, what's important to us. We have to be able to be independent thinkers and break away from what everybody else is doing, because so many people will try to talk you into doing something that you know you shouldn't do. Because you being so disciplined and knowing what you need to spend and what you don't need to spend sometimes it shows up your friends, and they'd rather pull you over and get you off your game than to understand and find out from you what you're doing that could help them improve their financial picture. That is what we want to do with the Financial Deviant podcast. We won't be the ones that are saying, hey, you look great. If it was about looks, you'd be the winner. Even though it's not about winning or losing, it's about building resources. Here, we have an opportunity to make better decisions that are going to put us in a much better position so that we have choices, we have freedom, we have flexibility. Choices, freedom, and flexibility. So let's dig in. Let's be serious about what we're doing, and let's ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. What is your why? And if you can seriously answer that, give that some real serious thought. What is your why? I will tell you, one of my whys is that if I leave here before my wife does, I don't want her to have to worry about a thing. That's one of my whys. It's not even necessarily about me. It's about her. It's about my family. Speaking of that, probably on the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about, you say you love your family, and I'm sure everybody does. I'm sure you love your family just like I do, but there's some things we need to do just to kind of to make sure they know that we love them. And that means putting some things in place, documentation, documents that we need to have prepared, legal documents, so that when we leave here, we don't leave our families in a quandary, that we make that transition. Even though they'll be sad and they'll miss us, we can do some things that will make them happy in a sense because we've taken care of our business while we're living. That's very important as well. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the show today. We're gonna, as I said before, have some really great things for you. But give this some thought today. Give today's show some thought. Who are you hanging around? And what information are you taking in, and where can you get better information if the information you're receiving is flawed and it's not leading you where you want to go? I appreciate you guys joining me, and we will see you next time on the Financial Deviant podcast.